I'm Franklin Cooper.
Tristan Jones.
Marcy Gonzalez.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Hello, ladies and gents. We are covering Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 7 today. And this episode is called The Dream Is Not Me. And I feel like the titles this season have been really, really fitting for the episode and what's to come. So I'm going to start with you, Marcy. What did you think of this episode?
This is an episode that I really liked. I liked that we got to see more of the bunkhouse crew. It just felt like there were a lot of things that happened, but it wasn't like action-packed like we're used to from Yellowstone. But we got to see some vulnerability from Beth. We got to see more of like why Rip is so loyal to John and to the ranch and to Lloyd. So I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, Brittany, our illustrious producer this episode, we were talking about it before everybody hopped on, but I liked it for the same reasons. This was more of a personal dynamic show, like seeing like the relationship between, these different characters, especially ones like Marcy said that we don't get to see a lot. Our bunkhouse writers didn't do a ton as far as like moving the plot line of the season forward. Some stuff we're just gonna have to deduce from those personal dynamic relationships that we saw in this episode. Like we saw Beth vulnerability. We saw, John and Summer get a little bit more clarity on their relationship going forward. We saw Ryan and the singer. I just forgot her name. I was Googling her yesterday. She's a really good singer. But we saw like the kind of dissolution of that relationship, at least in this stage. We see some things, not a lot, that really deals with the biggest conflicts of the season. Although we will talk about, Jamie and Sarah and how that's continuing to progress. But I like the episode. I'm ready for some action now. Ready for some big action. But I ultimately liked it. I give this episode like a 6.5 out of 10. Solid episode.
It's funny you say that. See, I give the episode a 5.5 initially. I'm up to a 6 now. The last 3 episodes have not really forward the storyline at all, but it has gotten back to the Yellowstone, the ranch, the bunkhouse, the characters within the bunkhouse, the progression of relationships between characters, like Ryan and his girl, and more Beth and Rip and John and Summer. So I appreciate that. And more to the cowboy shit. I wasn't expecting the tuberculosis spin, but it's a conflict that I'd rather see than more market equities. It's a conflict that I'd rather see than more of just the ranch trying to be taken away by evolution and airport, casinos, and all that kind of stuff. I think one of my main issues I have with the episode, and it's not a big issue because I feel like Taylor's going to forward it hopefully by episode 9, is that John hasn't done any government shit the last 2 episodes, like none. And it's like, I don't know, like I know in episode 4, he talked to Thomas at the press conference about meeting him. Now, I don't know how many days has passed, but he hasn't had that meeting with Tom yet. And I was waiting for that meeting because we don't know where they stand initially as far as like their relationship. I know that there was some unification the previous season between them two, but it was very little. So I like to see more of that interaction moving forward, just to see where they stand right now. Because like to me, if anything, they should be a united front. But again, with Taylor, you don't know. It could go the opposite direction. But as far as like the cowboy shit, and as far as like the interaction, and I need more Teeter, man. I love Teeter. I feel like we are being robbed of Teeter. Every time she's on TV, she pops. But Teeter is the reason why I moved from a 5.5 to a 6. She's that half-point mover for me for the episode. But let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. So the opening scene,
her bar.
right? She can drop bars in this episode, man. Bars and bears. She dropped both of them in this episode. But let's talk about the opening scene, man. Like so it goes back to our Rip flashback again, and I had to look at the name of the cowboy because he was never mentioned by name, but his name is Rowdy. That's his cowboy name, and I wondered because like the first 3 flashbacks, I wondered like, okay, from season 1 we found out that these cowboys are branded and they're there for life. So in my head, I was like, did he get taken to the train station? Like, why is he not in today's present time? And we get our reason why he's not here present time. So Rip and Rowdy are at camp. They're trying to find these wolves that are trying to attack these 5,000 cattle that's on the ranch. And Rip decides to get on his horse and go find some of these wolves. And Rowdy makes this random remark, which I feel like he did it on purpose, but to like say, I wish I was just grabbing, this girl's ass, that girl's ass, both cheeks. And we know at that point who he's talking about because Rip was with her in the 2 episodes, 2 flashbacks before, and now Rowdy had her. So they get into an argument. Rip measures him up like, "Hey man, don't talk about Beth like that. Stay away from her." Pretty much, telling her that I'll beat your ass pretty much. And Rowdy throws a fast one. He tries to sucker punch him. Rip ducks. They get into a fight. They're rolling around. Rip pretty much bests him and says, "Hey, stay away from her. I'll kill you where you stand." And then Rowdy, for some fucking reason, decides to come at him with a pocket knife. And long story short, Rip kills him with a rock. So, what was your initial thoughts seeing that scene, that fight between Rip and Rowdy, Tristan?
Initially, I mean, I thought that I don't really know what to think about. I'm struggling to get a grasp on the purpose of that flashback. Obviously, this is just another chapter into the development of Rip and Beth's relationship. I think the larger point of that flashback is to show Rip's dedication to the ranch, and just how long he's had that loyalty and where like it comes from, like the origin of it. And obviously John and the other cowboy, they did him a solid. They protected him. He demonstrated some trust in them by like being honest, because John was like, "Hey, you should have lied on this one. You should have lied." And Rip was just showing like, "Hey, I'm a stand-up guy, and this is why where we are now, where John unofficially has Rip as a right-hand man, someone I think he trusts ultimately, and we see the origin of that in Rip unaccidentally killing Rowdy."
Marcy?
That was such a good scene. They've been kind of alluding to it because we've seen Rowdy, I think, since the first episode and all these flashbacks. So I was like, okay, something has to happen with this guy. Like, there's got to be a reason why they keep showing him and this tension between him and Rip and Beth. So I'm glad that we finally know what happened. But I think what it does is it really shows you again, like Tristan said, his dedication to John for just kind of having his back on that. But also because I think I was under the impression that the reason like Rip had to be so devoted was that John, I guess, covered for him when Rip had like killed his dad or whatever. But now we see that it's for another reason. So I think that might also play into Beth's guilt a little bit, and we've seen her like be just like so apologetic to Rip, like, "I'm so sorry about what happened in the past." Maybe she feels kind of responsible that this is why Rip has had to like stay at the ranch and always be loyal to John and do what John says, even if it's something that Rip may not want to do, right? Like, we know that Rip has killed people and taken them to the train station. That might not have been what he wanted to do. We see that he, was very honest whenever he killed Rowdy. But, John told him that he has to, do what he says forever, pretty much. So I'm glad that we now kind of have a backstory, but it just felt while we see that John is covering for him and Lloyd covers for him too, I found it to be like, when I thought about it more, it just felt like a little exploitative too of John to be like, okay, well, yes, I will cover for you, but now like you have to, do my biddings for the ranch. So I kind of didn't love that once I rewatched it, but I thought it was just a really good scene.
Marcy, you bring up a good point too, and I think in season 2 we saw the flashback of Rip, his father killing his mother, and then Rip having to kill his dad, and that for me was reason enough to like stay devoted to the ranch. I feel like you're rehashing Rip's, or like remaking Rip's origin story, or reimagining Rip's origin story of why he's dedicated to the ranch. After you saw your mother get killed and you have to kill your father to protect yourself, that should have been enough to like showcase dedication. I feel like that was you just rehashing again of Rip's loyalty, which by season 5 we all know how loyal Rip is. So I thought that was kind of redundant. My second question for you, Marcy, is that do you think Beth knows that Rowdy got killed? Do you think Beth knows about the whole train station lingo that they have on the ranch?
I don't know. Like, part of me thinks that she doesn't, because I think Rip wouldn't have put her in danger to like tell her what happened, and now she knows, and that could be bad for her. So maybe she doesn't know. I think maybe if she found out, that would be why she feels just kind of bad. But if she knows, I don't think it's because either Trip or Lloyd or John told her. She found out some other way.
We have a comment or comments from the Texas Party Head. Thank you for joining us today, our fellow fan. So she says in our last message, I'm wondering at some point if Rip is going to have to choose between John Ranch and Beth, which I think is a good observation. Tristan, what is your thoughts on that question?
I think that's where a lot of this season has kind of been leading us. Like we can see him questioning the future of the ranch, the viability of the ranch going forward. I think Rip is more aware of the broader issues surrounding the ranch than he lets on. He's definitely not like involved in any of like the business um, dealings of the ranch, like just the larger, more macro issues, financial issues of the ranch. That's more of Beth John thing. But he knows, but he understands like where it's headed, where the tea leaves are reading, or how they're reading. Um, so I can definitely see a point where he has to decide to continue to support so vigorously, like what seems like a sinking ship in a certain way, um, or to take like this new route, this new path, or support Beth in this new path. Because really, what we're also seeing is like a clash of ideologies. John is stuck in the way this is how we've always done ranching, and this is how we've made money, or not made money, according to Beth. Doing it this particular way, and Beth is saying, "Hey, we need to take this ranch into the 21st century." And she's finding all these different avenues for the ranch to profit off of its land advantages, its cattle advantages, all these different things, and really switch up the business model. So at some point, Rip is going to have to decide: is he going to stay in this kind of rigid ideology of ranching with John, or is he going to move with Beth towards this more unstable, I guess, or just a newer way of doing things on the
More
ranch?
progressive though, right? Way more
Much more progressive, smarter. Honestly, going into watching this show, the biggest mystery I had in my head was like, how the hell do cowboys make money? Like, I have no clue how cowboys make money. I've lived in Texas my entire life. Like, what is that like? What is the business model there? What are the cattle worth? Like, when do you sell cattle? When do you not sell cattle? Like all these different things. And I think Beth, if she's right about how the ranch can kind of pivot its business model, then that's going to take the show to like a totally different thing, and it's going to take all parties involved, including Rip, to a completely different level that none of them really planned for.
Let's talk about that. Let's skip a little bit ahead and talk more about the Beth John ideology. So, long story short, John finds out that on the pasture that the cattle have brucellosis. Doesn't know how many cattle. Doesn't know how many of them have it, but he theorizes that it came from the bison or the buffalo, and it came to the cattle because Casey found a stillborn calf, and Lloyd found a stillborn calf. Walker found a couple as well. So he's panicking. So he, in his mind, he's like, okay, let's move at least half of them down south, where it's not harsh winter, to where they can feed naturally on the grass instead of feeding them all year. So he proposes his idea to Beth, and that's what Beth's like, what the fuck? Like, why are we doing this? And the numbers were staggering in this conversation between Beth and John. So Tristan and Marcy, I thought that John was selling beef. I thought he was like, I didn't know he was just selling cattle to other farms, ranches, and stuff, to where they made money off the beef and stuff. So Beth asked John, so how much is it to feed these cattle per acre? So John says about $12 to $14 an acre, depending on the size of the ranch. And Beth asked, well, how many acres do you need to feed these, or at least half this cattle? He says 100,000 acres. Comes out to like 1.4 million not a year, 1.4 million a month for the time they're going to be away feeding during the winter months. That saves 5 months in the winter, give or take. That's close to what, $7 million for the year, mind you. And this is a shocking thing to us as well. They make no profits in selling the cattle or maintaining the cattle. So it maintains that old adage of John just being somebody who doesn't evolve with the time. Like, this was done in the 1950s. I think Jamie mentioned this earlier in the episode, and they didn't make money then, so why would it make money now? And Beth comes with the idea like, well, there's slaughterhouses over. There's people who sell beef. Why don't we just sell beef? And I think Beth asked John, how much is to sell the cattle as is if they make weight? He says $1,100 per cattle, which is like, I think, $1.50 per pound. Marcy, what was your thoughts on John and his conversation, and where do you think it's going to go?
I think it's really enlightening too, to just help people like us who are not ranchers and farmers understand, like, it is very tough, right? Like, you can see somebody like John has this big ranch, and you assume like, oh, like, he must be making a lot of money because he's this rancher, but that's not the reality for a lot of ranchers and farmers. And it's getting more so now that it's just harder for them to keep up. So I like that they gave us some context and some background about that. And I agree. I think that was like a theme of this episode, right? Not only were Jamie and Sarah saying that the ranch has to evolve to keep up with the times if it wants to survive, but this is something that Beth is telling John that he needs to do. So I liked seeing her kind of push him to be like, okay, let's think of different ways. So that's what I want to see more of Beth this season, right? Not like scheming or like fighting or like doing all this crazy shit, but like actually like thinking of like really great and innovative ways to help the farm and to just be there on the farm and to be with Rip and to just, kind of help progress this farm or this ranch. So I think that was a really good scene. And you could tell how uncomfortable John was, because she's saying like, you're not a businessman, you're a rancher, which is like fine, but your business model sucks. And this is pretty much why we're not going to not make it, right? It wasn't the airport or the subdivisions or anything like that. It's pretty much you. You're what is going to run this ranch into the ground. So I really think that was really hard for John to hear. And it's good that he didn't react in like a really like abrasive way, right? Like when you're speaking truth to power, like that could happen. So I appreciated that, but I really liked seeing her push him to be like thinking of different ways to make some money.
Well, it just makes me wonder, like, how do you make money for as long as he's been the head down on this ranch? If you're barely breaking even on cattle, you don't sell pigs, you don't sell. Well, I guess they sell horses. I guess they sell like thoroughbred horses and things of that nature. But the fact that you have this 10,000-acre ranch and you barely breaking even just makes me wonder like how you're making money. Tristan, what were your thoughts on that conversation with John and Beth?
So just kind of picking up what Texas Potter had said, like in previous seasons, they have kind of given us context on the different ways that the ranch makes money through rodeos, selling thoroughbreds, like you said. For me, while she was going through it and talking about it, I was like, I don't know if I had the same epiphany. I'm like, man, there should be like Yellowstone steaks. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one fucking Ryan can sell steaks out here in these streets. Like,
they have Yellowstone cast iron pans now. I heard a radio commercial for it. So the next logical thing is Yellowstone steaks.
Yeah, brand that shit, man. Yellowstone saddles. Like, just brand everything on your fucking ranch that's worth a damn. You know
You're
what I'm
branding
saying?
actual humans, like brand shit and sell like I think especially knowing that the Yellowstone Ranch, its reputation nationwide across these different ranches and such. Like when Jimmy was traveling there for the Dutton Ranch, like these are very well known ranch. This is not like this niche thing in Montana. Like this is known nationwide for the most part. So take advantage of that. But ultimately, it's such a strange dynamic because the first half of the season was John pretty much lecturing Beth on what she needs to do to improve and grow. Here we have Beth doing the opposite. Really, she started, the episode before last, lecturing him about Summer and the potential damage that she can do. And now it's about the larger economic viability of the ranch going forward. And I just overall in this season, there's this tug and pull between those two, who really had like as clear a relationship that we've seen in previous seasons. It's John at the top. Beth might snap at everybody else, but with John, that she knows there's a limit there, and she tends to back down. Part of her growth is pushing back on John in a lot of different necessary ways. And this episode was another necessary way. Like they have to figure out a way to take advantage of all the advantages that their ranch has to make money, because it's too much money that they're leaving on the table. So that was my biggest thoughts just going forward. Is just honestly, it's more so the John and Beth dynamic and how that's changed this season, and how she's starting to take back a little bit more of the power in that relationship.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. Let's go back to the beginning of the episode. So Jamie is after a therapy / fuck session with Sarah. He's pleading about his childhood and about how John never loved him and how he had to live to this image that John wanted him to be. He said some very interesting things in that conversation that caught my attention. He said that I saw the Harvard thing. Like he never applied for Harvard. He went to Harvard after somebody applied for him, which was most likely Beth. But he said something interesting after that. He said that his John hating him never bothered him, but he wanted his approval anyway. I don't know how true Jamie is being to himself, because in previous seasons I remember like the admiration that he saw. He looked at Casey and Lee in episode 1, and how it looked like to me how he wished that John looked at him that way. That's seeking love and attention. And to say that on one hand, I don't care if he hates me, but on the other hand, I want your approval. Why would you want somebody that doesn't fuck with you or that you think hates you but want their approval? Tristan, what were your thoughts on that?
It makes sense to me, honestly, because there's a difference between validation and love. I guess we can start there. Where love is like a set of actions that you're doing to demonstrate to that person that you love them. Validation can be fleeting. Like, I just want validation for this thing that I did. And he wants John's validation because he's doing all this thing. What it really was saying with Sarah was that he hasn't been able to live his own life and make his own choices because this path has been decided for him. So in doing that, it seems like he's done that very well. Even though this was not his choice and how he wanted to live life. So yeah, he's going to want that validation, because what else is he getting out of it? He's not getting the love. He's not getting like the actual physical love from John. He's not really getting the respect. So at least, at the very least, it's like, hey, the thing that you set me out to do for this family, I did it. That's validation. Like, it's bare minimum validation, but he needs something out of this. Like, the money isn't rewarding to him. Being seen as Jamie Dutton is really smart, accomplished guy doesn't do much for him, obviously, because he doesn't equate it to having like an advantage with women. What is he getting out of this arrangement? Right? He's not even able to take advantage of it at the highest level and like politically, because John came and took that from him. So like, what else is there for him to get? And it's the validation of just understanding that I did the thing that I was supposed to do, that you had me do, and I did it well. It's just an acknowledgement, honestly. And that's really, I think that's honestly what he's looking for, because he's never going to get the love. He's never going to get the validation of being a true Dutton. So at least he can get validation from following orders the way he was supposed to.
This is where Texas Parthead and I kind of align. So in her comment, she says, I agree with Frank. Jamie is faking the funk in front of his homegirl. I think he wants her to believe he's cool with it. But that's also made me believe that maybe Jamie is using her and has his own, I believe, agenda, she's trying to say. To me, the conversation kind of didn't make sense, only because Jamie has known John all his life. Jamie also knows that John would never do something that's un-John-like. John loves Casey and John loves Beth wholeheartedly. But we've seen throughout different examples throughout the series that John uses his kids as a vehicle to get to where he wants to be, whether it's economically, whether it's politically, whether it's a power dynamic to make sure that his name stays on top. Not saying that he doesn't love his kids. I'm saying that he has a towering type of affection towards his kids, where it's more about legacy than pure love for his children. And for me, I think Jamie was kind of showing his hands a little bit by setting up Sarah. Now I'm really believing that he's setting up Sarah for something in the long run, only because he knows John so well. You're not going to get validation from John. That's not John Dutton. That's never been John Dutton. It never will be. Marcy, what was your thoughts on that conversation with Sarah and Jamie?
Yeah, it's very interesting because it shows us like another level of intimacy, right? Not only have they been having sex and, been having this kind of clandestine relationship, but now like he's sharing his feelings. So again, is it just like, some after sex pillow talk where you're all up in your endorphins and you want to share? Or again, is he like setting her up? Like, who knows? But it was just very interesting to see just Jamie like talking about how all he wanted to do is be a rancher, right? Like, he's like, I was brought up on this ranch. I learned all about ranching and cow-calf pairs and viruses and all of these things. And he's like, but my dad made me be a lawyer. So I think you see like the resentment that Jamie has because he was sent off to do something that he didn't even really want to do. But then the resentment that once he came back and did exactly what John wanted, again, he didn't get that validation from John. So that was just really difficult for him. And then I loved, when he's like, I don't even know who wrote the essay. And Sarah's like, well, it was probably your sister. And I think that's what made him really upset. He's like, damn it, I hate Beth. And she's the one who wrote my Harvard essay that got me in there. And so I think that was a little bit, that was just a little bit funny to me. But yeah, I don't know at this point, especially the way Wes Bentley is playing it. I don't know if Jamie's really falling into Sarah's trap or if he's got a trap of his own, because again, like Beth still has incriminating stuff on him. So why is he going to be scheming with Sarah Atwood and market equities if he can still be brought down by whatever leverage Beth has?
It's why I don't believe that this is real, because you're going to prison for life if Beth releases information about what you did to your biological father. I don't think he's stupid enough to risk that, unless he was doing it as a front to get market equities back and catch them off guard. But I mean, we'll see. I believe episode 9 is going to be explosive for us. I really do. I think a lot of things going to come out with that market equities storyline and John taking a loan, which we've got to mention that John is considering taking a loan out for this $7 million for the ranch. I mean for the cattle down south. But there was more Summer, more Beth drama, not drama, but like more verbal sparring back and forth. So they wake up in the morning. So all the cowboys are getting up to go get ready to vaccinate the cattle and all that kind of stuff. So Laramie, who is Walker's girl, Lainey, who is Ryan's girl, and of course Summer, who is John's girl / environmental specialist. They wake up out of the tents. They go get some coffee. Beth's there. Welcome sluts. That's the opening line to the three girls. And then now Summer and Beth go through this philosophical debate about marriage and the sanctity of it, or the oppressive nature of it, or whatever. And I like that conversation between them, because it shows that just because we fought and just because we shook hands does not mean that we're going to feed into each other's ideologies and believe what each other believes. So I found that very realistic, because these are two strong-headed, stubborn women, and they're not going to back down for nothing. Tristan, what was your thoughts on the initial morning talk between Beth and Summer?
I think that's just how Beth like communicates with people. Like she communicates through insults. So like I like what she said to Monica about how they're used to that type of talk. Like they're in that world. And Monica's not, and she does it to Summer because Summer just needs to hear it. And she needs to kind of get washed with this like real, just real talk in general. And she needs to kind of have a lot of her ideologies thrown back at her, just so she can see different perspectives, which she struggles with. So, it just, that's Beth, like it further, I think another thing we've seen this season is kind of a behind the scenes on what makes Beth Beth. Why does she do the things she do? Why does she lash out the way she lashes out, and kind of peeling back those layers piece by piece. But that was just an interesting window into why Beth responds to things the way she does, why she just blurts things out. And I guess it's good to know that she doesn't do those things just because she's simply mean spirited. It's like she's mean spirited, but like she wants to get something out of it. Like there's some altruistic message there waiting. So that's a good thing to know. But,
Marcy, what were your thoughts?
I also really liked that scene. Again, we saw a lot of vulnerability from Beth after everybody left, and she's there, left talking with Monica. But I like the kind of back and forth that she had with Summer. Again, they are showing that they could have different points of view and again not come to blows. And I think there's some validity in both of their points of view, right? Like I'm a hopeless romantic and I love love and marriage and things like that, but I have a completely different view of it now in my late 30s than I did in my early and mid 20s when I was getting engaged and got married. So I really bought into both of their perspectives. And I liked how, Beth, basically told Monica, like, those girls can take it. Like, that's why I'm being a bitch to them. Like, you find it cruel and that's why I don't do it to you. So I liked that we saw Beth just be like kind in a way to Monica and be vulnerable and tell her. And then, sharing her story of child loss was just going to a very vulnerable place that we really haven't seen Beth in. So I really liked seeing that. And I think Kelly Reilly did a really, really great job of just showing like that emotional range. So I really liked the scene. We're seeing a lot of vulnerability both from Beth and from Jamie in this episode. And I think that was a great counterbalance.
From what I got in that scene from Monica and Beth is that I wish I had more Monica and Beth scenes. The last Monica and Beth scene I remember is season 3, where Monica's in Bozeman. She's trying to go shopping and she gets racially profiled, and Beth puts that store clerk in her place. The array of differences of personality traits between those two characters, they fit each other so much because they respect each other, and they kind of just know each other so well to where they know not to push other person's buttons, and more importantly, they both love Casey. And so I wish those tender moments between Beth and Monica was more common and more placated throughout the show. But I mean, I love that scene. I do. So after that, we go back to the scene where Jamie is in office, and Market Equity, Sarah and her partner in crime come in, and they are talking about the news that popped. I know a couple episodes ago we found out that John signed a bill to put the ranch in the conversation in easements. And I guess it just came out now, and Mark Equity's found out about it. Jamie knew nothing about it. I know Jamie and John talked about it, but I didn't think Jamie thought that John was going to do it. And now with it being in the easement, that pretty much puts the ranch and state in the states in a bad position, because when Jamie first became Attorney General, they had the deal for the airport, the deal for the casino, so they pretty much negotiated everything in good faith. Now Market Equities is pissed off, and now we're talking about them being on the hook, the state being, not John, but the state being on the hook for $4 billion once this case is filed in the state of New York. What were your thoughts on that? I'll start, Tristan.
For me, I mean, just starting from the jump, I'm with his assistant there. Like, you can't just have people just barging into your office. Like, you're the fucking DA. You're him. Like,
no, not just DA, AG.
AG, excuse me.
Yeah.
Attorney General, like that can't happen. It makes everybody look bad. More so him. I think again that reflects again like the chasm in ideology of like how the state should move going forward. And it's been a real big part of John's campaign of trying to block progress. Like he said, I'm the enemy of progress. And that it comes with real consequences. And the show has been, how can I say? The show has been really reticent on like really driving home those consequences for getting rid of the airport revenue, the thing he did with the ranch, putting it in an easement, like these things, like there are legal consequences to those things that John has ignored. And just because we like John more than Jamie does not mean that Jamie's not right on those issues, like those legal issues that John. So in this episode, we see John not fully understand like the business part of being a rancher, and we're not understanding the legal part of being a rancher, and like all the things that come with the decisions he's made trying to protect the ranch. And both of them, one consequence that we saw with Beth is basically him getting dressed down about being a shitty businessman. And we're going to see it again with the consequences that come from Jamie finding out that the land has been put into an easement. And there's going to be consequences that he's going to have to deal with. Whether Jamie is like premeditating all this is irrelevant. It's going to come a time where he's going to have to face the consequences of those decisions. And it's going to affect his governorship. It's going to affect the viability of their ranch. And again, it's just another thing that the ranch, John, the family is going to have to overcome to keep that ranch going forward.
Marcy, what about you? What were your thoughts about that conversation?
Yeah, I agree. Kudos to the assistant for, again, speaking truth to power and being like, you may not want to hear this and it may not be my place, but I loved what she said. Women know women and men know what women want them to know or what women tell them. So I'm glad that she had the nerve, or just the gumption, to mention that to him and to point that out to him. But again, Jamie doesn't take it in a bad way, it doesn't seem, right? Like, he just kind of smirks and says, like, well, thanks for telling me. And then, Market Equities is there, and they're like, here's a conservation easement. Did Jamie not know, or is Jamie pretending he didn't know that John had done this? I don't know. Again, it could be like, is he setting them up too? So I'm really interested to see like how this moves forward and how they try to impeach him. And again, whether or not Jamie has his own plan and is like, setting Sarah and Market Equities up, or if he's really being played by them. I really, really want to see how all of that kind of washes out.
That's a good point, Marcy. I didn't think about him acting like he didn't know about the easement, even though the easement was mentioned episodes before. That's a good point too. I mean, I guess Sarah's position, like, she's there to be a disruptor and trying to stronghold the ranch, because I mean, they have money to fight this for years to come. I mean, this is a $1 billion corporation, and while John is struggling just to break even, so that is a good point. We haven't seen Market Equities leading lady. I can't remember her name, the white hair lady, in a while now.
Carolyn?
Yeah, Carolyn. I'm not sure if she flew back to New York and.
Remember, they told her that New York wanted her back there,
Yeah.
and she dispatched Sarah to pretty much handle that business while she was out and get revenge, basically.
Well, I think that was a missed opportunity, because I really like that actress. She does a really good job. So it would have been interesting to keep her there as well and see like how she is able to kind of fight Beth and John. But I guess they just wanted Sarah.
Absolutely. The next scene is with Thomas and Linnell. So Thomas goes to Senator Linnell's office, and Linnell gives him the terrible news about not the president. Well, I guess the president too. They want to. The Department of Interior wants to put a pipeline through the reservation, through Tom's reservation, which is weird, because during the president's visit to the reservation, they never brought that up at all. That was not a thing at all. So now Thomas has to battle with the state and with the Department of Interior on this, and it makes me wonder, like, what are they going to do moving forward? And Linnell's like, I think Thomas tells Linnell, like, hey, well, stand in solidarity with me because you're against it as well. Do you think that's a good idea for Linnell to stand in solidarity with Thomas on this matter, Marcy?
That's a really interesting question. I think maybe she's kind of like done the math on it and feels like if I just kind of stand with them, like that might play better, because obviously like pipelines built under reservation land that could affect their drinking water, that would be like a big thing, right? That a lot of people would get very outraged over, rightfully so. So I think she's gonna play it as, like, I want to support like our indigenous communities and the environment, and I'm going to stand with Chairman Rainwater on this. But I also think it's because she has something to gain, right? It's not just because she's doing this out of the goodness of her heart and she really like cares. But I liked how, she's like, well, you could try to fight it, and then maybe like they can reroute it and have it go through North Dakota. And then Mo makes a really good point. He's like, well, then it's North Dakota. Like, they're fucking up the land in North Dakota there. So like, he's showing how like he cares for all of the land, not just the land in South Dakota, part of the reservation, but all of the land. And Linnell's basically saying like, well, I don't give a shit. That's not my problem. I'm not the governor of North Dakota. So it was interesting to see kind of those two viewpoints of actually being a steward of the land and what's going to be best for the land and for the people that live on the land, and then doing this for political reasons. So I like that they've kind of teamed up and they're going to try to wrangle John into this as well. And I love how Thomas pointed out, he's like, he hasn't really been doing the governor things that he was elected to do. Like, why is he out like roping and branding calves? And then he makes another excellent point is just remind him that he's our governor too, right? So he's not only trying to save his ranch and, being a voice for the other ranchers in the state, but you also have to do right by the other constituents in your state.
And if you remember, like Rainwater mentioned last episode, like President Obama came like a few months before they tried to run pipeline through, so he predicted how this was going to happen. Damn, I just missed my whole train of thought. So that scene was again a vehicle for demonstrating like the different ways. How can I say that? Just like the environmental kind of division between all parties involved. I think we need more scenes like that between like these tertiary characters discussing and demonstrating like the absence of like John and his governorship. Like I think we should hear from more people about how him being absent or abdicating his duties to do cowboy shit basically affects different people around the state. Like we need to hear, yeah, he's our governor too. We need to hear that from Rainwater's perspective. Lynette has tried to impart that upon John in so many different ways. Like, hey, you have these responsibilities. You have to talk to and engage with these different groups outside of your main constituency. Otherwise, they're going to be like these different, consequences. There's going to be like unintended consequences that because he's not a politician, he can't see 2-3 steps ahead. Like if I do this or I don't do this, I'm going to have to deal with this, which cause this type of issue. Like he doesn't think like that. He thinks completely binary. Like this is what I want to do. So this is who I'm going to talk to, get this done. And that's that. Like not thinking that, hey, I may need to bend in a certain way. So that was, I just think like a really needed scene. I also think Lynette did the math before Rainwater even walked in that I can support them up to a degree. And I do like Rainwater kind of putting the onus on her. Like, no, I want you to support this up front. This says a lot having, a senator support the reservation, support indigenous people on protecting our land, protecting our water, protecting our resources. So I think it was a very needed scene. We need more people complaining that the governor is not doing governor shit. Like if this was Texas, what we'd be saying about our wheelchaired governor. So I want to see more scenes like that.
You make compelling points. I think to go back to Linnell's point of standing with Thomas, or Thomas proposing that idea of standing with Linnell in support of being against the pipeline. It's the moral thing to do. I get that, and it's very true. But in politics, it's not about morality. It's about who can back you and how and what decisions you make in order for the masses of your states to back you. And with the Native Americans in Montana, the conservative whites, I mean, let's keep it simple. They don't give a fuck about the Native Americans. That's why they're on reservations. So I guess for Linnell, how does that help Linnell? Because the Native American population, the vote is a very small population. So in combating this and standing in solidarity with Tom, how does that help Linnell's position as senator? Anybody can jump in and answer that question.
Well, I think it's because she kind of said, like, you've got to get out ahead of this before your opponent does. I think she sees the opponent as a more progressive. So she wants to make sure that Thomas stays in power so that things don't kind of go off kilter. And I think I'm kind of comparing him kind of to like their reservations version of like AOC, right? Like she makes a lot of conservatives like very nervous, but she makes a lot of like Democrats very nervous too, because there's still a lot of very a lot of like very moderate Democrats that are also like very off put by this very progressive younger politician. So I think that's kind of what I forgot his name, the new character is kind of supposed to personify. So I think maybe she's like, I would just rather like stick with Thomas, who I know is probably not going to go off the rails like this other young kid might.
I got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Tristan, what about you?
I mean, I agree. Like, I think this is the show kind of dipping into like its political bag and kind of making these cross show, real life references like Guy Martin, the younger, more progressive. Yeah, it's funny because they kind of position him and that side as being the progressive side while they were out here shooting dogs on his behalf. Um, I like I said, I don't. The thing that she has to gain, I guess, is just I guess placating her constituency. We assume that her constituency is more progressive. Um, I think we can make that assumption. I don't know. I think that's kind of all she gets out of it. I couldn't see like a clear thing. I guess on a national scale, like coming out and being like anti-pipeline is a big deal. And remember, she's a senator, so she kind of has to deal with this from a national perspective and not just locally like John does. Like governor of a state is more local than a senator is. So uh, maybe that's what she gets out of it. Just more national pub. Being seen as the person who is protecting the natives or seeking to protect natives against these corporate incursions on their land.
Also, do we know she's a Republican? I think like that is the assumption, right? Like she's from Montana, she's got to be conservative, she's got to be a Republican. So I don't know, maybe if she is a Republican in the show, it might just have something to do. If this administration is supposed to be like the real life Biden administration, she just might want to oppose the pipeline because it's from an administration of a different party. I don't know. That could also be a motivation for her. Like we see again in real life politics where like a person on one side, a politician on one side might oppose something that the other side has proposed, not because it might be like a bad plan or they are totally against it or for it. They just want to be contrarian to the other, party.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't really clarify her party, who she represents in the show. So, I mean, that's a good point too. John definitely gives me Republican vibes for sure. But for Linnell, yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure. Some more Beth and the economical effect that the cattle could have on the ranch. She calls a local meat packer, and she's just trying to learn the game of selling beef. So she finds out with this meat packer that the very ranch that John called to lease the land, to get a lease land to feed his cattle, that same ranch sells their cattle or their beef to this packing company. And Beth finds out they sell close to 8 million pounds of beef. I'm not sure that's in a year. I'm not sure what the time frame in that, but they make their money by selling this beef and selling it on the website. So from sirloin to New York steaks, all of that, center cuts, all of that. And John's worry, which I had to look this up when talking about repacking and packer. So the packing is all about how you cut the meat and how you package it. And doesn't seem like that difficult to me. I mean, I feel like all ranchers and all people who have cattle cut beef the same way. You get your sirloin from this part of the cow, you get your shoulder cut from this part of the cow. But it seemed like John was more nervous about the repacking and how that settled, because he said that people don't really figure that out, which doesn't make sense to me because there's so many people who sell beef in this country and to packing companies. So I took that as John not wanting to get off his old mindset of like it's all cake mindset of how he deals with his cattle, more so of like than the difficulty of like packing meat. Tristan, what was your thoughts on that conversation with Beth?
I mean, like I said earlier, like this is a new territory for John, and so much of this show from episode 1, like season 1, all the way to now is about how older generations resist change, not because the change is not effective or can't be effective, it's because it's foreign, and they resist pretty much all foreign aid, all foreign, you know, potential competition. Like anything that's foreign is seen as the enemy in that particular state, in that particular state of mind, I guess you could also say. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something they could have been doing for decades and could have made billions, but does it does it speak to their way of life? And I think that's John's biggest issue is like protecting his way of life because there's a lot of security that comes with that particular way of life. Like just keep doing this like we've always done. Like, hey, you're not making that much money, but nobody's making that much money. Like this is just what we do. Whereas like, no, actually, like we can take this ranch and we can take this family and turn it into like a true dynasty. But there's a lot of fear in the unknown, right? So I can understand John again, he's 65, in around that area, not being super reticent and jumping into like a new lane for the ranch, but they're running out of options. Like they can't keep doing the things that they're doing now and fight off all these much more expensive challenges to the ranch, and also preserve the family dynasty for generations to come. So he has no choice.
Marcy?
Yeah, you brought up a really good point, which led me to start Googling. Because it looked like, just from my Googling, it looks like just there's like 4 big companies that kind of control the beef industry. So not only like would John have to figure out like obviously the ranching part, but then you also have to figure out like the slaughtering and the packing part and then the shipping and like all of the overhead that comes with that and all of like the regulations, the USDA and all of these things. So I think maybe that's what they were alluding to. It would just be too much of an effort, too much money to invest to actually like do this in a way that wouldn't make, your beef super, super expensive to where nobody would buy it. But also, I think this was just like a convenient plot point because then this introduces us to like them having to go down to Texas to the fort near the 4 Sixes, and introduce the show that I guess is also coming up with, I guess Jimmy is supposed to star in it. So this was a really good segue into, well, here's what they're going to be doing in Texas, but I want to know more about like what's that going to look like. Are the people, or Rip and Teeter, are they also going to be part of this new show down in Texas with Jimmy, or are they just kind of going to like take the cows down there and then they all decide like, oh, like we can go back to Yellowstone? So I'm interested to see like what happens. And then does Beth actually go down there with Rip because she can't be alone without him for a year?
John makes compelling points about it being the relative unknown, how much it's going to cost with the overhead and packaging and being on the USDA consideration, all that. I get that. But I find it hard to believe that that's going to be more costly than taking out a loan for nearly $7 million plus interest. You're going to have to pay interest on top of that money, that loan that you're going to borrow for you to lease the ground for your cattle. I find that very hard to believe that that's going to be less cost effective than taking out a loan for $7+ million, if not more, to lease ground for your cattle. And that just, to me, it speaks to more of the arrogance, and this is the way we've always done it. My daddy did this. My granddaddy did this. This is the way that the Yellowstone's always done it, and not look at what Beth and Jamie have been saying this whole time. Now look at other avenues to evolve and make money from the very product that comes out of your ranch on a day in and day out basis.
Especially now, I think, where there's like so many people that are into like farm to table and like buying locally sourced. I think that could, if he and Beth and Rip were to be able to figure out a way to make it work, I think that could be great, because not only like do you have a lot of people that are getting into that, which is great, but also you have an influx of people from other states that are probably a little bit more progressive, and they already kind of have that mindset of, we want to buy local and support the smaller businesses. So that could be something that could definitely be beneficial for them if they figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. So moving towards the end of the show, So now that we find out that they have to go down south for probably a year now, they all go to the fair. So all the big characters in the bunkhouse are there. John's there. Summer's there. So amongst the bunkhouse mates, they're talking, and I can't remember who brought up the point of being gone for a year, but Ryan's girl overhears this, and Ryan Lainey's upset. She takes off or whatever, and like they have this big fight about it. And Marcy and I spoke about this off camera on Sunday, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Tristan. So Lainey's upset about this. Ryan uses an example of to try to like have Lainey see his point. Do you sing in the shower? And Lainey says, "Of course, I'm a singer." This is my singing in the shower. This is ranching and cowboying is who I am, which is fine. I get it, but you're leaving in the morning. You're leaving literally in like 12 hours to go down to, I'm not sure where they're going, but somewhere down south. Did you think it would be a good idea to let her know what was going on before she found out about somebody else? So, Tristan, what was your thoughts on that with Ryan and Lainey?
I mean, yeah, you could have mentioned that. That's a good thing to mention. I think how he framed it to her after the fact would have gone over better if he mentioned that beforehand. Like, hey,
absolutely.
Like, this is what it is. Like, this is what I love to do. You're a singer. You should understand, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I hope that the relationship, makes it. I hope, they're able to straighten that out and work that out long distance, whatever. I like Abby, man. Good singer. Nice jams. Yeah, like I completely understand. Like, I'm surprised it's not. This is a thing, like not having as much bunkhouse characters, storylines this season, is that I want to know how everybody else feels about this big mission that they're undertaking. Like, they all seem excited about it. I'm excited for the opportunity. Like, apparently, like this is like going to war for somebody. Like, they were like literally thanking for the opportunity. So I would like to see more of how, the different characters feel about being gone for so long and taking on this mission for the ranch. And I guess it's being kind of portrayed through Ryan and Abigail, whatever. But outside of Beth, she's the only one who is losing out on somebody for this long period of time. So I'd love to see more of that.
Absolutely. Marcy, have you changed your stance, man, about this conversation? Because Sunday you use all like, Lady knows what it is, and Ryan knows what it is. So what's your take now?
I mean, at first I was like, okay, like just yesterday, I guess in the show timeline, they had said like this can't really go anywhere. It's just going to be hookups and fun. Like, we don't see this going anywhere. And then the next day, she's all in her feelings, like, oh, you're leaving, and like, I wish you were like fighting for me. Like, I understand that you're a cowboy and this is your dream, but I wish you were fighting for me. And I'm like, you just yesterday were saying that like it's not going to go anywhere. So how did you change your mind that much? Like, that must have been like some really good, some really good loving the night before. But
sorry.
I guess I kind of understand, because I've also been in a situation where I found out something that my significant other should have told me, but didn't. And I found out in a group when somebody else had mentioned something. I was like, oh yeah, like I remember how that feels, and like feeling just so stupid that like people assumed I knew and I didn't. So I was like, okay, like, yes, he should have definitely told her. But also, like, how did you catch feelings so quickly? What the hell? Like, I'm so confused. So I'm still kind of up in the air about it. So we'll see what happens with them. But I mean, this is a nice opportunity for Ryan as well. So I think, he should pursue it, just like she should pursue her music. And then, if they can find their way back to each other, I think that could be really great too. But also, like, don't give up your dreams for somebody that you just met, I think is my point.
I want to speak to your point of them both thinking it's just a one-time thing. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. This is my thoughts on this. I think Ryan and Lainey both said that to each other as a defense mechanism to not get close. I think they had feelings for each other pretty quickly, very initially, and things were progressing so fast that they had to keep checking themselves and saying it outwardly, even though they know inwardly that, damn, this person is fucking awesome. I don't want to leave this person. Because like you said, their lives, like he's a cowboy, she's a singer, she probably goes from town to town, state to state, performing and all this kind of stuff. But I just feel like that was just a defensive mechanism on both parts. And I hope they find a way to each other because I like them. I think they're a cute couple. They seem like a very sane, less toxic couple too. We have a lot of drama with couples in this series, and their relationship seems very pristine, very loving, very funny, and I want more of that. I just wish Rip wasn't so damn Rip and like left Ryan off this trip, because like Teeter and her boyfriend are together, like they're not being separated. You know what I'm saying? And maybe because Ryan's
Colby's not going.
Was Colby not going?
No, and they seem chill with it too. So I think, and like, did we ever see like when they got together? She'd been like trying to wear him down for a while, and now they're like all like hugging and stuff. And so yeah, like they're also going to be apart, and they seemed like very chill about it. But I do get your point about it being a defense mechanism, because I mean, like I totally get it. Like I catch feelings pretty quick, so like that probably would have been me. But also as a viewer, I'm like, damn, like don't be so clingy.
I feel you on that. Damn, I thought Kobe was going, but yeah, I think he mentioned Walker, Teeter, Ryan, and was it Gunner? I can't remember the four guys' name, but okay. Well, that wraps up the episode for today. Please stay tuned for next week for more episodes. We do plan to do a 1923 podcast of episode 1 of the new series, the new Yellowstone spinoff. So stay tuned for that on our YouTube base to see scheduling for that. We will market that very soon. But again, thank you again. And for more information about podcasts, if you want us to submit a show or you want us to talk about a show that you love so much, please follow us on social media, like, comment, subscribe. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Let's grow our audience. We're almost at 200 subscribers. So we're almost there. So please, when you find out about our podcast, share with all of your constituents, friends, family, baby dads, baby mamas, whoever. We're also on Spotify, Apple Music as well, Anchor as well. So if you want to hear the audio version of our podcast, please, like that as well. But thank y'all so much for coming and enjoying this episode with us digitally and online. And we will see you sometime soon. So thank y'all again, man. Y'all be safe. So for myself, Tristan, Marcy, y'all be good.